In the modern world, where we are constantly connected, where the noise never stops, finding a moment of silence has become a rare luxury. Phones ring, messages flood in, notifications pop up endlessly. Our minds are bombarded with distractions, to the point where true stillness feels almost unreachable. But have you ever wondered what would happen if you stepped away from the chaos? If you truly embraced solitude instead of avoiding it? Miyamoto Musashi, one of the greatest samurai in Japanese history, did exactly that. He spent most of his life walking alone, not just to master the sword, but to sharpen his mind and philosophy. In his final work, Dokudo, The Way of Walking Alone, Musashi left behind 21 guiding principles to help individuals achieve self-mastery, wisdom, and inner peace. But this isn't just the story of a warrior. It's the story of a man who understood that solitude is not something to fear. It is a path to self-discovery, self-mastery, and unlocking the most powerful version of oneself. Today, we step into Musashi's world, unraveling the power of the loner and discovering how solitude can transform your life forever. Before we dive into the profound teachings he left behind, let's first explore the man behind the legend. Miyamoto Musashi, a warrior, a philosopher, an artist, and above all, a seeker of mastery. Musashi was no ordinary samurai. Born in 1584, in an era where Japan was fractured by civil wars and shifting allegiances, he chose a path that set him apart from the traditional warriors of his time. Unlike most samurai who served a master, Musashi was a ronin, a wandering swordsman without a lord. His skill with the sword was unparalleled. He fought and won over 60 duels, many of them to the death, never once tasting defeat. But his life was not just about fighting, it was about understanding the nature of conflict, of discipline, and ultimately of the self. Musashi's journey was not a blood-soaked path of endless violence. It was a relentless pursuit of self-mastery. He was obsessed with refinement, not just in combat, but in thought, in philosophy, and in living life with absolute clarity. This pursuit led him to a life of solitude, not as an escape, but as a tool for transformation. Unlike monks who retreated from society, Musashi's solitude was not about isolation. It was about focus. He believed that to truly master oneself, one must silence the external world. The noise of society, the opinions of others, the endless distractions of daily life, these are barriers to true understanding. He didn't merely live alone, he trained his mind to be undisturbed, even amidst chaos. This state of mental solitude allowed him to see clearly, act decisively, and remain unattached to fear, regret, or ego. He distilled this philosophy into his final work, Dokudo, which translates to the path of walking alone. It is a set of 21 principles that serve as a guide to living a life free from illusion, free from distraction, and free from unnecessary attachment. Through these teachings, Musashi showed that solitude is not loneliness. It is a gateway to strength, wisdom, and ultimate freedom. Musashi saw solitude not as a withdrawal from the world, but as a means to truly understand oneself. He believed that when a person embraces solitude, they sharpen both mind and body, without interference, without outside judgment, without the weight of societal expectations. In silence, he found clarity. In solitude, he found strength. And in walking alone, he found himself. This wasn't a philosophy meant just for warriors. It was meant for anyone seeking mastery over their own mind, emotions, and life. Musashi's Dokudo teaches us that solitude is not about cutting ties with the world. It is about cultivating a mind so sharp, so focused, that it remains unshaken no matter where you are or what challenges you face. Now, let's dive into Musashi's teachings and uncover how embracing solitude can radically transform our lives. Musashi wrote, "Think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world." This was more than just advice, it was a way of life. He urged people to shift their focus outward, to observe the world with clarity, to learn from it, to embrace its lessons, and to cultivate a mind unclouded by ego. In doing so, one could gain a deeper understanding of existence, forging a path of continuous self-improvement and inner mastery. But how do we take these teachings, formed centuries ago in feudal Japan, and apply them to our fast-paced, hyper-connected, modern world? Musashi was not merely a warrior, he was a thinker, a philosopher, and a man who understood that solitude was not isolation, it was refinement. His experiences in solitude taught him lessons that are as relevant today as they were. In his time, he distilled these insights into Dokudo, also known as The Path of Walking Alone, a short but profound work written in the final week of his life. In it, he outlined 21 principles designed to guide an individual towards self-reliance, clarity, and ultimate freedom. These were not abstract concepts meant only for a wandering swordsman. They were, and still are, practical lessons for anyone seeking to master their mind, emotions, and life itself. One of the most striking lessons Musashi teaches is the value of self-reliance. He states in Dokudo, "Do not seek pleasure for its own sake. This is not a rejection of happiness, but a warning against the fleeting nature of external validation." In today's world, where instant gratification is everywhere, where likes, comments, and material possessions provide momentary bursts of joy, it is easy to fall into the trap of seeking fulfillment in external sources. But Musashi reminds us that these pleasures are temporary illusions. True satisfaction, the kind that lasts, comes from within, from one's discipline, purpose, and dedication to personal growth. Another powerful principle from Dokudo is do not under any circumstances depend on a partial feeling. This serves as a caution against impulsivity. How often do we make choices based on fleeting emotions, acting out of anger, fear, or excitement, only to regret them later? Musashi advises us to make decisions from a place of calm deliberation, not emotional turbulence. In a world where social media amplifies knee-jerk reactions and encourages snap judgments, this wisdom is more crucial than ever. We are taught to slow down, to think deeply before acting, and to remain steady in the face of emotional storms. Musashi also stresses the importance of detachment, not just from material things, but from attachments that limit growth. He writes, "Do not hold on to possessions you no longer need." While at first glance this may seem like simple minimalism, its meaning goes far beyond that. Yes, physical clutter can weigh us down, but so can mental and emotional baggage. How many people cling to toxic relationships, outdated beliefs, or habits that no longer serve them? Musashi encourages us to let go, not because we should be indifferent, but because clinging to what no longer benefits us only prevents new growth. This principle teaches us the art of release, of allowing things to flow in and out of our lives naturally, without resistance. Among his most profound teachings is, "Do not fear death." In Western culture, death is often seen as a shadow, something to be avoided, something terrifying. But Musashi did not view it that way. He saw death as a certainty, a natural part of existence, something to be accepted rather than feared. This does not mean recklessness or carelessness, but rather a way of living fully and without hesitation. Too many people live with paralyzing fear, fear of failure, fear of embarrassment, fear of taking risks. Musashi's wisdom urges us to live each day as if it were our last, not in reckless abandon, but with purpose, clarity, and courage. Because in the end, the only real tragedy is a life half lived. consumed by hesitation and regret. Perhaps one of the most difficult yet liberating principles Musashi offers is, be detached from desire your whole life long. In a world that constantly tells us that we need more money, more status, more things, it is easy to become enslaved by longing. Musashi's lesson is not about rejecting ambition, but about liberating ourselves from the endless cycle of wanting. When we are always chasing the next thing, we fail to appreciate what we already have. Musashi teaches us to find contentment in the present, while still striving for self-improvement. This delicate balance between persistence and peace is key to a fulfilled life. These principles are not just words in an ancient manuscript. They are a roadmap for navigating the complexities of modern existence. They teach us that true strength is not found in domination, but in self-mastery. They show us that clarity comes not from external noise, but from inner silence. And most importantly, they reveal that the path to wisdom is not found in conformity, but in the courage to walk alone. Musashi's teachings offer us a way out of the endless distractions of modern life. In a world where attention is constantly being pulled in different directions, where our thoughts are shaped by algorithms and external pressures, Musashi's Dokodo reminds us to return to ourselves. It reminds us that solitude is not something to be feared, but something to be embraced, because it is in solitude that we truly meet ourselves. So how do we apply this wisdom to our own lives? We start by practicing self-reliance, by learning to find fulfillment not in external approval, but in our own efforts. We cultivate mental discipline, making decisions with clarity, not emotion. We let go of what no longer serves us, whether it be possessions, habits, or relationships that hold us back. We face our fears, understanding that life is too short for hesitation. And most of all, we learn to detach from endless desire, finding gratitude in the present moment while still moving forward. Musashi walked alone, not because he had to, but because he understood that true mastery begins within. His philosophy was never about running from the world, but about meeting it with unwavering clarity and strength. He saw solitude not as emptiness, but as a forge, a place where the self is tempered and strengthened. Centuries later, his lessons remain just as relevant, because the greatest battles we fight are not on the battlefield, but within ourselves. And perhaps, as Musashi did, we too must learn to walk alone, not as a retreat, but as a path toward becoming something greater than we ever imagined. Today's world is vastly different from the one Miyamoto Musashi knew. In his time, solitude was not an option, but often a necessity, a reality of life for a wandering swordsman, a ronin without a master. He walked alone, both physically and mentally, not just as a warrior, but as a seeker of wisdom. Today, solitude is no longer a condition we are forced into. It is something we must actively choose. We are more connected than ever before, yet strangely, we are also more distracted, more restless, and in many ways, more disconnected from ourselves. Technology has blurred the line between solitude and loneliness, making it difficult to differentiate between meaningful isolation and mindless withdrawal. But if Musashi's life teaches us anything, it is that solitude, true, intentional solitude, is not about being lonely. It is about mastering oneself. In an age of constant notifications, endless entertainment, and perpetual engagement, solitude is a lost art. We check our phones the moment we wake up, we scroll through social media when we are bored, and we consume, content even in the quietest of moments. But what if, instead of filling every empty space with distractions, we allowed ourselves to sit in that silence? What if, like Musashi, we used solitude as a tool, not to escape the world, but to understand it, to understand ourselves? Solitude, when embraced correctly, is not an escape from reality but a deeper dive into it. It is where clarity emerges, where we can process our emotions without external influence, where we confront our fears, our desires, and the stories we tell ourselves. Musashi understood this. He sought solitude not because he rejected the world, but because he wanted to master his place within it. So, how do we implement Musashi's lessons in our hyper-connected world? The first step is to intentionally carve out time for solitude. This does not mean disappearing into the mountains or abandoning modern life, but rather setting aside moments in our daily routine where we can disconnect from the noise. It could be as simple as waking up 30 minutes earlier to sit in silence, free from notifications, responsibilities, or distractions. It could be taking a walk without music, without a podcast, just listening to the rhythm of your breath and the world around you. It could be setting aside time in the evening to reflect, to journal, or simply to exist without feeling the need to consume external information. In these moments of solitude, we give ourselves the rare opportunity to just be. Another way to cultivate solitude is through digital detoxing. We are bombarded with information at an overwhelming rate, and while technology has its benefits, it also keeps us in a constant state of stimulation. Musashi believed that the mind must be clear, undisturbed, like still water. But in today's world, our minds are more like turbulent waves, endlessly reacting to the next thing on our screens. Setting boundaries with technology, whether by turning off notifications, having screen-free hours, or simply being mindful of when and why we reach for our devices, can create the mental space needed for introspection. By choosing moments of intentional disconnection, we are not just withdrawing from technology, we are reclaiming our attention, our focus, and our ability to be present. Solitude, however, is about more than just being physically alone. It is about mental and emotional independence. It is about learning to detach from the need for validation, from the urge to compare ourselves to others, from the pressure to conform to societal expectations. Musashi walked alone not just because he had no master, but because he understood that true strength comes from within. He was not swayed by the opinions of others. He did not seek approval or live according to external expectations. This is one of the hardest lessons to apply in the modern world, where approval is measured in likes, followers, and digital affirmations. But real confidence, real self-assurance, does not come from others. It comes from knowing oneself. To truly embrace solitude, we must learn to stand firm in our beliefs, in our decisions, even when they go against the grain. Musashi's path was one of discipline. He saw solitude not as a luxury, but as a necessity, a non-negotiable part of his growth. And so, if we are to apply his teachings, we must prioritize solitude as part of our own self-care. Too often, we treat alone time as something secondary, something optional, something we only allow ourselves if all other responsibilities have been taken care of. But what if we flipped that perspective? What if solitude was not the last thing on our to-do list, but the foundation of everything else? Musashi understood that a mind constantly bombarded with distractions is a mind that lacks clarity. To be effective in the world, we must first cultivate focus within. By treating solitude as an essential part of our routine, not an afterthought, we create space for deeper thinking, for creative problem-solving, for self-awareness, and for a sense of inner peace that cannot be shaken by external chaos. The world we live in is not Musashi's world, but his lessons remain timeless. We may not fight duels with swords, but we battle distractions, self-doubt, and the overwhelming pull of external expectations. We may not walk alone on war-torn roads, but we must learn to stand strong in our convictions, even when surrounded by noise. By embracing solitude, not as loneliness, not as avoidance, but as a tool for mastery, we give ourselves the chance to thrive, to develop true independence of mind, and to discover who we really are beyond the distractions of the modern world. Musashi did not fear solitude. He welcomed it. He walked alone because he knew that in solitude one finds clarity, one finds purpose, one finds the unwavering strength that can only come from within. And perhaps by following his example, we too can learn that solitude is not something to run from, but something to embrace, something to cultivate, and something that, in the end, may be the key to unlocking our true potential. Embracing solitude isn't always easy. It often feels unnatural, going against the very instincts that have been ingrained in us for centuries, the need for connection, for social validation, for the presence of others. We are social creatures by nature, and in today's hyper-connected world, the idea of being alone can feel almost unnatural, even unsettling. There's an underlying fear that solitude means isolation, that stepping away from the crowd equates to rejection or failure. We equate being alone with being lonely, but the two could not be more different. Loneliness is a state of longing, a feeling of being cut off from others, of lacking connection. It is an absence that creates suffering, a craving for interaction that remains unfulfilled. Solitude, however, is a choice. It is being alone without feeling lonely, a state of complete engagement with oneself, an opportunity for deep reflection and self-understanding. Solitude is not a void, it is a space of clarity. It is a deliberate retreat, not a punishment, but a gift we give ourselves. And yet, in a world that constantly demands our attention, choosing solitude can feel counterintuitive, even counterproductive. How often do we reach for our phones the moment we are alone? How often do we fill every silence with distractions, afraid of what we might find in the stillness? We don't need to abandon society, retreat to the mountains, or live as hermits to experience solitude. It's not an all-or-nothing concept. Rather, solitude is a practice, a habit, a rhythm that must be cultivated. It is about balance, learning to carve out moments of quiet in a world that never stops moving. Some of the greatest thinkers, artists, and warriors in history, including Musashi, understood that solitude was not a withdrawal from life, but a deeper engagement with it. They sought moments of stillness, not to escape the world, but to see it more clearly. Musashi himself did not always live in isolation. He fought, he traveled, he interacted with others, but he also knew when to step away, when to remove himself from distraction and focus inward. His philosophy of solitude was not about complete detachment from the world, but about mastering the ability to exist within it, without being consumed by it. He understood that true power came from within, not from the noise of the external world, but from the silence of the mind. Intentionality is key to embracing solitude. It is not something that simply happens. It must be chosen, cultivated, and protected. In the modern world, solitude is something we must actively create for ourselves. That means setting aside time to disconnect, to remove the distractions that constantly pull us outward. It means choosing silence, even when the world is loud. It means learning to sit with our thoughts, even when they are uncomfortable. Solitude is an act of self-discipline, a deliberate decision to step back, to reflect, and to engage with ourselves on a deeper level. But solitude isn't always comfortable. In fact, at first, it can be deeply unsettling. When we remove distractions, we are left alone with our thoughts, our doubts, our insecurities. This discomfort is why so many people resist solitude. It forces them to confront parts of themselves they would rather avoid. But growth happens in discomfort. Musashi understood this well. He knew that solitude was a forge, a place where the self is refined, where weaknesses are exposed and transformed. He embraced the discomfort because he understood that on the other side of solitude is clarity, strength, and mastery. To walk the path of solitude means to step outside your comfort zone. It means questioning the narratives you've been told, breaking free from external validation, and learning to trust yourself. It means developing the kind of inner strength that does not waver in the face of uncertainty. When you embrace solitude, you stop seeking approval from the world and start finding answers within yourself. Through his life and his teachings, Musashi gave us a blueprint for overcoming these challenges. His Dokodo, the path of walking alone, was not just a set of abstract principles. It was a guide for navigating life with clarity and purpose. It teaches us to rely on ourselves, to detach from fleeting desires, to cultivate discipline, and to face life with courage. Musashi's solitude was never about isolation for the sake of isolation. It was about freedom. Freedom from external noise, freedom from attachment, freedom from the illusions that hold us back. The lessons he left behind are timeless. They apply just as much to a modern entrepreneur, an artist, a student, or anyone seeking a deeper sense of purpose. Solitude is not about removing yourself from the world, but about moving through it with greater awareness and control. It's about learning who you are when no one else is watching, when there is no audience, no applause, no validation, just you and your thoughts. If we truly want to grow, we must learn to embrace the discomfort that comes with solitude. We must be willing to sit in the silence, to listen, to reflect. This is where real transformation begins. When we no longer fear being alone, when we no longer need distractions to fill the gaps, we step into a state of unshakable strength. Musashi walked his path alone, not because he had to, but because he chose to. And in doing so, he found something most people spend their entire lives searching for: complete mastery over himself. If we follow his example, if we dare to embrace solitude, not as something to be feared, but as a tool for growth, we may find that the answers we've been seeking have been within us all along. Solitude is not emptiness. It is the space where we truly meet ourselves. It is where we become who we were always meant to be. The path to self-mastery often requires walking alone. It is a road filled with challenges, moments of doubt, and the occasional temptation to turn back. But those who dare to embrace solitude, to silence the noise of the world and face themselves fully, will find that the rewards are beyond measure. True clarity, inner strength, and deep self-understanding are not found in constant external validation. They are cultivated in stillness, in discipline, in the willingness to stand alone. Musashi knew that solitude was not a retreat, but a forge. A place where the mind is sharpened, where illusions fall away, and where one learns what it truly means to be free. So the question is, will you take that first step? Will you dare to embrace the silence, to trust in your own strength, to walk the path that few are willing to take? The journey may not be easy, but it is undoubtedly rewarding. And perhaps, like Musashi, you will come to realize that being alone is not a limitation. It is the key to becoming something greater than you ever imagined. Thank you for watching. If you gained something from this video, please like and subscribe to the Top Hidden Knowledge channel for more content on wisdom, spirituality, and personal growth. And if you have time, feel free to check out other videos on this channel. Until next time.